Summer homework, week 3. We're going to look at number 10. Number 10, the hardest one on this sheet. Numbers 1 and 2 were weeks 1 and 2. So everything is kind of spiraling. It shouldn't take you very long to do these problems. And if you're doing them every week, then I anticipate you're spending 10, maybe 20 minutes a week. And I need you to know what you're doing. So when you walk into honors geometry, you can do all of the math that you've already done so that we can now apply all of that math to geometry. Geometry is just math with pictures. You already know how to do the math. Number 10, the hardest one. What we have to do is, again, whenever we see parentheses, we learned it in week 2, is we either have to do PEDMAs, where parentheses is the first thing we can do. We can't add any of these terms. None of them are exactly alike. Or we have to use the distributive property. Whenever we have two parentheses next to each other, good likelihood that we're going to use the distributive property. I didn't give you a ton of room on here. I'm so sorry. And I write too large. So we'll see how this works out for us. When we're using the distributive property, every single term has to be multiplied by every other term. I make rainbows in different colors so that I can make sure that I'm doing all of that multiplication. My brain needs to see that I've been doing it and that I already did that problem. So you'll notice that I'll do something like this, where I have n squared times 3n squared. That means that I have 3n squared times n squared is n to the 4th. You are adding those exponents, not multiplying them. Then I have n squared times a negative n. So it's going to be minus n squared times n. That's 3 n's, or n cubed. And I've got n squared times a negative 7, so minus 7n. Now, in purple, we're going to see that we're going to have 2n times 3n squared. 2 times 3 is 6. N times n squared, that would be 3n's, so I have n cubed. I have 2n times a negative n, so it's minus 2n times n. You'll notice there are 2 n's there. It is n squared, and n squared, or 2n times negative 7 is minus 2 times 7 is 14n. Then in red, I have negative 7 times 3n squared. Negative 7 times 3 is a negative 21n squared. Negative 7 times a negative n is a plus. Negative times a negative is a positive, 7n. And negative 7 times a negative 7. Negative times a negative is a positive. 7 times 7 is 49. So 3 different colors here to show my brain and you what we've multiplied. You also should notice that I have 3 in blue, 3 in purple, and 3 in red. That means that I've multiplied this n times 3 things. Thank goodness there are 3 things in that second parentheses. This 2n times 3 things. Again, there are 3 things in that second parentheses. And this negative 7 times 3 things. Now, we are going to have to put them together. So the first thing I'm going to do is, we're going to use this. We are going to circle, put an underline next to, put a box around anything that's exactly the same. What I'm going to notice, I don't have any n to the 4ths. So I can't do anything with that. N cubes, I'm going to put a box around any of my n cubes so that I know what I'm adding together. Notice I have negative n cubed and 6n cubed. I'm going to now look at my 7n. I don't want to skip around. I don't want to move around. I'm just going to go left to right. So it's an n all by itself, which means I'm going to find the other n's that are all by themselves. I am going to, in purple probably, circle all of the n's so that I can see them. I have an n by itself there, an n by itself there, n by itself there. So left to right, I have hit up to there. Here, I'm going to underline anything that is an n squared. I have a 2n squared and a negative 21n squared. Now, if I go left to right, I don't have any other n to the fourths. I can see that I have circled, underlined, put a box around everything, so that now when I'm adding them together, I don't accidentally miss something. That's the key, is that I can look at this ahead of time and know what to do. But sometimes when there's a lot of things, putting different cues there helps your brain say you missed something. So again, we're reading left to right. 3n to the fourth. I am now looking for my boxes because those are my n cubes. I've got a negative n cubed, negative 1, and a positive 6. Negative 1 plus 6 is a positive 5. Now, because we write it in traditional form, I've got an n to the fourth, an n cubed. Now I'm looking for my n squareds. Those are underlined. I have a negative 2n squared and a negative 21n squared. That's a negative 23n squared. Then n, I have a negative 7 plus 7, that's a 0, minus 14. So it just becomes minus 14n. And then 49 is the only one without an n. We can't add or subtract or do anything else because nothing is exactly the same. I have an n to the fourth, n cubed, n squared, n, and the constant. So that's as far as you can go. So when you're doing these, I highly recommend doing what I call the rainbow, where I'm distributing it and I'm writing it down right away so that I can recognize that I've done it. I also recommend that you're putting boxes, circles, underlines, something like that around it, different colors, so that you can see what you have to add together. Because when you do that, then your brain doesn't accidentally forget something. Because had I not done that, I actually was almost going to forget that negative 14n. And I would have said there was no n's. So you have really 8 more or 9 more problems to do on that sheet if you just followed along. Have a great day.